We are live. What's going on, you guys? It is Tuesday, the 27th, and I got a great show for you. We're going to start with a little Ace of Base, because it's a beautiful life, guys. It is. It's a beautiful life, and you know it. You know you love this song, and you know it's a beautiful life. So beautiful. Oh, it's a beautiful life. Oh, oh, oh. Hey, I'm glad you said that, SD. I actually have, that's actually on my list of stories, is China and the Philippines is escalating again. Again, more China and the Philippines escalation. I'm glad you're here to comment on that. How do people in the Philippines feel about it? About China? Oh, it's a beautiful life. No say. What's going on, y'all? It's me, SpaysE McG, and it's a beautiful life, and we got a beautiful show for you. I just want to be here beside you with your nerd news. That's right, it's me, SpaysE McG, your favorite cartoon nerd with the news, and I'm back at it again, doing the thing I do, which is A, reporting on the stories that no one else is talking about, B, poking our finger in the chest of the establishment and saying, not today, you guys aren't going to do it again today. I'm reading, I got carried away by the chat. All right, yeah, so we've got a lot to talk about today. Joe Biden recently did an interview last night with Seth Meyers. We're going to try to look at that. We have the press secretary coming out. You guys know whenever it's equitable for her, okay? We have lots of news. Lots of news. China, well, they're causing trouble right now. There's a lot of things going on with China in the South Pacific, specifically. Well, they're fucking with the Philippines. They're fucking with Hawaii. They're just fucking with everything, right? We got a lot to talk about regarding China. Even we got a little news with Russia. They're gearing up for war with NATO. So that's a thing. And, yeah. We got a nice little crowd starting to form out here. Who do we got out here? We got SD, my guy. Just got back from the Philippines. So he's going to enjoy a little bit of news that we have about the Philippines. We got Tam Tam. We got Michael the King. We got Jokerfish up in here. Yes, I agree. Yes, pug pug. They eat the pug pug. I actually was one of the songs I wrote yesterday about them eating trash food in the Philippines. It's sad. I've been learning a lot about the Philippines just because it's culturally significant. It's like significant to world events right now. Yeah, so what SD is saying is that the people there, and this is something I've noticed too, is they're not really focused on politics or anything like that. They're more focused on trying to survive, right? When you have to live off of trash food and pig butt soup, right? You don't really focus on world politics, right? When you're worried about where your next bowl of pig butt soup is going to come from, you ate the pug pug? Oh my god! Oh my god! If you guys don't know, that's the trash food that they make. They go and they literally recycle trash and they like refry it in order to get to survive. I mean, that's how they live. Pig butt soup is delicious. The pig anus, ugh. It's gross. They look like the whole bowl of soup, each chunk of pig anus looks like a butthole. It's so gross. That's what they live off of, man. That's how they live over there. It's sad. It's really sad. But on the plus side, you can get a very fine wife there. So there's that. You can get a very good woman there. The women there are not like the women here. They want to be good little wifeys, right? Not like the women here. They don't even believe in that shit. They're just like, oh, what? Honesty and loyalty and devotion? No, there's none of that anymore in America. All right, yeah, so we're just going to start here. Nope, not there. Where is the story I want? Here is the story I want. Okay, here's the story. Haley defiant as campaign braces for blowout loss in Michigan. So, Nikki Haley is facing another expected humiliation in Michigan's Republican primary on Tuesday. And she has a simple answer when asked why she is still campaigning for the GOP presidential nomination when former President Donald Trump appears to be the inevitable nominee. I'm doing what I think is right, she said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. I'm doing what I believe 70% of Americans want me to do. Yeah. I guess you can say 70% of Americans if you consider that 60% of America is a bunch of dumb fucking morons who have drank the gender fluid. Yeah, then yeah. Let's see. That number references polling showing 7 in 10 Americans want an option other than Trump versus President Biden in this year's presidential election. That's actually misworded. That's actually cleverly worded to be inaccurate. What the poll actually shows is 70% of Americans don't want Trump or Biden, right? It's not that they don't want Trump versus President Biden. It's they don't want Trump or Biden. So I think that that's actually the way it should be written. She's a Democrat plant. Yeah. Michigan does have Republicans, SD. There's a whole part of Michigan, the northern part of Michigan, where it's literally wilderness up there. It's all small rural towns, right? Out in the middle of, they call it the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and all of that is Republican. Donald Trump won Michigan in 2016, if you remember. The former South Carolina governor, who was also the first United Nations ambassador in the Trump administration, has pledged to stay in the race through Super Tuesday on March 5th, when 15 states hold contests. Trump could be positioned to gain the delegates needed to secure the nomination by a week or two after that. Haley held 2 campaign events in Michigan on Sunday and Monday after losing to Trump Saturday in her home state by 20 percentage points. What a loser. What a loser. And we're just going to go ahead and jump out of here now. Let's just hear what this has to say.
The outcome appears to be all but certain, but one super PAC is here trying to flip the script. 7 Action News reporter Brett Cass.
Oh, we don't want to hear about this. Fuck this. Okay. So, Michigan primary. So not only is Haley on the ballot to try to upend Trump, but there is a current push inside of Michigan in order to urge people to protest Joe Biden's stance on Israel by voting uncommitted. So there's also that, right? And so Michigan voters head to the polls. The critical 2024 battleground state of Michigan is holding Republican and Democratic primary elections today. Former President Donald Trump looks to further tighten his grip on the GOP nomination. Biden faces ballot test. Biden is poised to easily win the Democratic primary, but the incumbent is facing resistance led by some Arab American Democrats who are pushing for an uncommitted vote to send a message about his response to the Israel-Hamas conflict. Now, Trump is dominating, right? Now, the last time there was a poll conducted in Michigan, Trump led 72 to 27%. So, Trump has the last known poll, Trump had a 50-point lead. So, there's that. Okay? Now, that's all taken care of. So the next big story is that a migrant is a suspect in the Laken Riley murder, and he's accused of seriously disfiguring the student, as affidavit reveals a grim details in the case. Jose Antonio Ibarra, 26, who faces multiple murder and assault charges, is not thought to have known the 22-year-old nursing student when he allegedly kidnapped and killed her as she went for a run on the University of Georgia campus. The suspect was also charged with aggravated battery for seriously disfiguring her body by disfiguring her skull, according to the affidavits. Ibarra is also charged with preventing Riley from making or completing a 911 call with intent to harm when he allegedly snatched her during her run, the affidavit says. Yeah. He was on the FBI radar. Like all other allowed incidents. That's definitely a way of looking at it. Let's see. The suspect faces 8 charges, including felony murder. Additional details about the type of object used or exactly how she was killed were not included in the affidavits. The attack took place between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. So in broad daylight. So this happened in the middle of the day in broad daylight. That's crazy. Meanwhile, Athens Clark County DA Deborah Gonzalez announced Monday that she's appointing a special prosecutor for the case. Gonzalez said she's naming attorney Shella Ross, whom she described as a knowledgeable and well-respected trial attorney with the expertise ready, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so last year, Ibarra twice slipped through the hands of law enforcement. He could have been deported after a bust in the Big Apple. So this guy is a repeat offender, it seems. So you may be onto something there, SD. Because they had an opportunity to apprehend and deport this guy, and he's a known offender, yet he was allowed to remain in the country. Okay, what do we got next? Okay, Biden urges Congress leaders to move quickly as government shutdown looms. Okay, so this is something that they're going to be talking about once the press secretary does come out eventually, when she does, right? She's only 15 minutes late, guys. That's actually early for her. So we should at least expect another 10 minutes before she shows up, at the minimum. So let's just kind of get ourselves up to date on what they're going to be talking about. President Joe Biden urged top Democrats and Republicans in Congress on Tuesday to move quickly to pass funding to avoid a looming partial government shutdown and send weapons to Ukraine or face dire consequences. Right? So what's happening is all these funding bills, right, A, don't address any Republican concerns for border security, and B, are all tied to dumping billions of dollars into the meat grinder of Ukraine. So that's the reason why they can't get this stuff across, right? $1.59 trillion is how much they want to spend altogether. $1.59 trillion. Yeah, no shit. Government shutdown threat number 7,500,000,000. Yeah, exactly. Ukraine funding becomes more urgent every day. Yeah, I mean, they're getting their ass handed to them, right? I don't think more money is going to help Ukraine when what they need is more manpower, right? They can't get any more manpower, and I don't think money is going to help their big issue, which is an overwhelming Russian superiority on the battlefield, right? That's their problem. It's not the lack of funding, it's the lack of everything. Like, even Russia, as incompetent and as outdated as its military equipment is, should have no problem. I mean, I can't understand why they haven't won already. Like, why they haven't, taken Kiev yet already. It doesn't make sense. I think they're just trying to just kill as many people as possible. Like a war of attrition. Like, they're not even trying to win. It's actually disgusting what's happening. Like 1 million people probably have died in Ukraine. You know what I mean? There's probably 1 million people dead in Ukraine already. So, yeah. Now, speaking of President Biden, he appeared on Seth Meyers last night. So we're going to go ahead and have a look at that.
Welcome back to Late Night. We're here with President Joe Biden. You mentioned some classified material, some documents recently leaked, some classified documents. And this isn't a gotcha show, but I do want to ask about it, that says you are currently 81 years old.
Who the hell told you that?
Yeah.
That's not what it said at all. It actually said that Biden is a feeble, I mean, it didn't outright say Biden is too old and feeble to stand trial, but that's basically what they said.
That's classified.
That's classified. All jokes aside, according to recent polling, this is a real concern for American voters. How do you address that
we got the
concern
we got the
going
press
forward
secretary
as
coming.
you come up to the 2024?
Oh, she's 5 minutes early in black time. Hey, SD, did you see Bitcoin is on a tear? 57,000, y'all. Remember, I told you to throw your life savings in at 18,000. Just remember that. I told you it'll never be that low ever again in your life. Just remember I told you that. What was that, a year ago? A year ago, you would have made 300% on your money. Exactly. Wow. It does approach indeed. There'll be a sell-off after the halvening. So there'll be another opportunity to buy Bitcoin again, probably in the 40s after the halvening. It always sells off after the halvening, so. So you'll probably have another opportunity to buy in the mid-40s, 45, 46 again. Maybe as low as 40, like 42, 43. I would buy at that time. Ooh, look at her.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Well, I like her little outfit today. It's very classy. She looks very classy. I like the pearls, of course. You guys know I love her in pearls. And, yeah, I like it. She looks good.
Okay.
Very
I have
classy.
A couple things at the top, and then we'll get going. A short time ago, President Biden and Vice President Harris concluded a meeting with congressional leaders on the need to keep the government open and pass the National Security Supplemental. In the meeting, the president made clear that Congress must take swift action.
See, that's why we talked about this
fund the
before, guys.
government
Because I told you that she would come right out and talk about how they need to pass Ukraine funding. So
prevent a shutdown. A shutdown would cause needless damage to hardworking families.
oh, there's going to be mad manipulation. It's going to be glorious.
Forward is
I hope we get another 25x in 2025. I hope 25 is like 2017 and 2014 or 2017 and 2013. Right? I hope that 2025 is as big as 2013 and 2017 were. And not a dud like 2021 was.
through bipartisan bills that are free of extreme policies. The president also emphasized the urgent need for Congress to stand with Ukraine as it defends itself against Russia's brutal invasion. Ukraine has lost ground on the battlefield in recent weeks and is being forced to ration ammunition and supplies due to congressional inaction. The bipartisan National Security Supplemental passed the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan support, 70 to 29, and would pass in the House if it was brought to a vote. It would arm Ukraine, invest in America's defense industrial base, help Israel defend itself against Hamas, and
You
provide
hear?
humanitarian
All the money is going to bombs, right? So how this works, I've explained this before, but real quick, I'm just going to go over it again, is we give the money to Ukraine, Ukraine buys bombs from us. So all the money goes to the military-industrial complex, every dollar.
for people
Well,
impacted
besides
by
what the
conflicts
Ukrainians
around
grift
the world,
for
including
themselves, of course.
Palestinian civilians.
There's always that
The president
Ukraine
called on
grift.
the House to support our national security and pass the supplemental and made clear the dire consequences if they failed to act. Now, today, in the wake of the Alabama Supreme Court decision threatening access to IVF treatment, Secretary Becerra is in Alabama today to hear from families and healthcare professionals. Today's visit is a critical part of the Biden-Harris administration's ongoing work to hear directly from families impacted by the Republican elected officials' extreme agenda. The Biden-Harris administration will
extreme agenda of not having World War III. Their extreme agenda of not allowing millions of Chinese or tens of thousands of Chinese spies to pour through the southern border, right? We haven't even got to China news yet. China is, they're bad, okay? That's very bad. China bad, okay? China are bad.
Continue to fight back against
you shouldn't mess with
on
China.
Reproductive freedoms, whether that's attacks on abortion care, birth control access, and now IVF access. It is absolutely unacceptable to this administration when women are denied the care that they need. President Biden and Vice President Harris will continue to work to protect access to reproductive health care and call on Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade in federal law.
Roe v. Wade.
Women in every state. And some news for you today, this Sunday, March 3rd. Vice President Kamala Harris will return to Selma, Alabama to commemorate the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday by joining the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. While there, she will deliver remarks on honoring the legacy of the civil rights movement and the Biden-Harris administration's continued work to achieve justice for all and encourage Americans to continue the fight for fundamental freedoms.
Fight for your fundamental freedoms, like abortion and racism. But those are given to you by the government. And if you think that your freedoms come from God, that you are endowed by your Creator with certain unalienable rights, like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, then you are a far-right Christian identitarian extremist, and you will be dealt with. And if you think you have the right to petition the government for your grievances, and you're a Republican, we will put you in jail.
Alabama will be the 12th state the Vice President has traveled to in 2024 after visiting 24 states in 2023.
Yeah, that's a shitty song,
my
too.
colleague, Admiral
Bloody Sunday by U2 sucks.
John Curry,
it really
Tennessee,
sucks.
is here
Matter of fact, pretty much all songs by U2 suck, actually.
Updates in the Middle East.
I don't understand why they're so famous.
I think, good afternoon. I think, as many of you know, USAID Administrator Samantha
that's a
Powers
nice
in Israel
suit.
this week.
You gotta hand it to to Admiral Kirby. That man has a very nice suit on every day. I'm very jealous.
For a series of meetings, including ongoing efforts by the United States to increase the delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance to civilians that live in Gaza. Today, the administrator announced that the United States will provide an additional $53 million in urgently needed humanitarian assistance, which will include assistance to the World Food Program and other international NGOs, providing resources for food, shelter, water, medicine, sanitation, hygiene, all to the people of Gaza and the West Bank.
I agree,
Brings the
Jokerfish.
total amount of funding announced by the United States government since the 7th of October to more than $180
Hey, what's up, Eli?
million. Now, there's no question that much more aid is needed to address the critical and urgent needs on the ground. That's why President Biden and the entire team will continue to work every day to increase the flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza, while also prioritizing the safety of civilians and aid workers. That's also why we are working so hard on a temporary ceasefire, to not only get the hostages out and the fighting paused, but all to get that critical humanitarian assistance in and to increase the flow. There's just not.
SD says, it's an epic soup that we all paid for. That's true. Not me, but you did, yes.
Enough getting in right now. There was significant progress towards those ends last week following U.S. engagements in the region. We're building on that progress this week, and the president and his team remain engaged around the clock with multiple partners in the region. But as the president said just the last 24 hours or so, there's no deal as of yet, and there's a lot more work to do.
Yeah, so Biden isn't actually, this is one of the stories that I did not cover because I didn't know if we were going to have time, and we didn't. so you wouldn't have got it anyway. But Biden said that there would be a ceasefire deal, and Israel said, no, there won't be. So Biden's got egg on his shirt again.
Speaking of more work to do,
Egg on
the
his
United
face.
States took additional action today to counter terrorist financing and to disrupt Houthi attacks on international shipping. In coordination with the United Kingdom, we sanctioned the deputy commander of Iran's IRGC, Mohammad Reza Falazadeh, for his role as a Houthi-affiliated operative and for owning and operating a vessel used to ship Iranian commodities in support of both the Houthis and the IRGC. We also designated 2 additional companies that own and operate a vessel involved in shipping more than $100 million worth in
Guys,
Iranian
we're going to put sanctions on the
behalf of Iran's
Houthis,
ministry.
right? They don't even have internet. Like, they don't even have roads or, like, stuff, right? They're, like, literally, pulling their missiles around with camels and shit. And we're going to put sanctions on them. Oh, that's going to stop them. If bombing them won't stop them, what the fuck is sanctions going to do?
Ministry of Defense. Biden administration has now administered over 55 separate Iran sanctions rollouts targeting more than 550 individuals and entities. All told, we've taken targets with Iran's involvement in human rights, abuses,
We should be sending special forces in to blow up their uranium refining operations. But this president doesn't have any testicles. And I think he's on the take from Iran. Because everything he does helps Iran. Like, they're saying, oh, he put sanctions. I bet those sanctions help Iran in some way.
Missile, drone, and non-proliferation programs. We have no plans to lift, waive, or provide any new sanctions relief for Iran, and we will continue to look for ways to take action and to hold them accountable. With that, take the question.
Thanks, Karine. John, 2 subjects. First, with regard to Israel and the possible ceasefire, a senior official from Egypt
I don't
told
see
AP
Jackie or
that
Peter.
there's a 6-week ceasefire that could go into effect, with Hamas agreeing to free up to 40 hostages, and Israel would release at least 300 Palestinian prisoners. Would those terms provide sufficient incentives to both sides to find a way to work together?
We're still negotiating, and I am not going to negotiate from the podium. I'm not going to comment about those particulars. We're still working out the modalities of this arrangement, and we're hopeful that we can get there.
And then, secondly, Secretary Yellen said today that she was looking toward unlocking the value of some $300 billion in frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine. Does she want to spend that money, or is the U.S. looking to use it as collateral for like a debt issuance?
What we're talking about here is the potential for using frozen assets back in 2022.
So they're going to steal Russian money from U.S. banks. Russian money that they illegally confiscated. And, like, by confiscating these Russian assets, they've weakened people's trust in the dollar. And now when they steal these dollars and use them to buy weapons for Ukraine, they're going to cause a run, probably. They're probably going to devalue the dollar, worldwide with this. This is a bad idea.
We froze some $300 billion worth of Russian assets at the beginning of the war. What we're talking about is the potential of using some of those frozen assets to
he has I am perched on the fourth dildo grip on the podium.
Now, that also, we still believe Russia needs to be responsible for the damage they've caused in Ukraine, so that's not going to let them off the hook for that. But
yes, technically the victor has to pay all the debts and all that. So when you take over a country, you're responsible for all the money it owes. Yes.
It could be used for that purpose as well.
But are you going to spend it, or are you going to use it in an alternative way?
Again, the idea would be exploring the option of being able to use those frozen assets to help Ukraine as they defend themselves and as they try to recover from 2 years of war. But I want to make a couple of things clear.
This is highly illegal, by the way. Like, this is why, like, people put their money in U.S. banks so that things like this don't happen, right? This happening is an attack on our whole entire financial system. Like, this is bad news.
Clear. Number one, we still need more legislative authorities.
Like, this is bad news.
The president to be able to act on that, to quote unquote,
like,
spend
this is going to hurt the U.S. dollar globally.
Number two, and this is not an unimportant thing, and the secretary said this as well, we've got to have our coalition partners who also were involved in the freezing of these assets to come along with us. And so the conversations we're conversations we're having now.
It wouldn't be a fucking Biden event if the guy couldn't speak properly.
They're on board with the usage of these frozen assets.
Thank you, Karine. John, thank you. Next Monday is a very specific date that the president offered up for when this ceasefire could begin, especially, as you mentioned, if negotiations are still ongoing.
This chick is hot as
can you
shit.
Provide any insight about why he offered up the date of next Monday and what has to happen between now and then?
He told you himself that he was getting advised by his national security team, particularly our national security advisor, about the progress that we were making and the direction in which the talks were going. We're hopeful and cautiously optimistic.
They're
that we'll be able to
cautiously
get
hopeful
this
and optimistic.
pause in place very, very soon.
And then secondly, has the president been briefed or seen Israel's plan to evacuate Rafah?
We have not been presented with such a plan.
Admiral, the president referred to his hopes for a ceasefire. You have used the word pause. Previously, he has talked about temporary ceasefire. Is he shifting his sense of what kind of a cessation in violence would be, how long it would be? Anything on that is new in his view?
I wouldn't say that there's anything new, Kelly. I mean,
okay, I'll take a look at that,
temporary
Aussie.
ceasefire. They're roughly the same
Uzi. I bet you
thing.
it's
I'm not talking
Uzi.
about anything different.
I bet you money that's
What we're
how you
hoping
say
to
it.
When
Uzi.
the president says ceasefire, it carries a different sort of weight.
What we're hoping to do is to get an extended pause in the fighting. I've just called it a temporary ceasefire myself. That would allow for several weeks, hopefully up to 6, where there would be no fighting, so that we can get all the hostages out, increase the flow of humanitarian assistance, but just as critically, get the fighting stopped so that there's no more civilian casualties and there's no more damage to civilian infrastructure. Now, the last pause was a week. What we're hoping for is much more aggressive than that. And as we've said before, we also hope that if we can get that in place and both sides can abide by it for the course of several weeks, maybe up to 6, that maybe that could lead to something more in terms of a better approach to end the conflict writ large.
What will end the conflict is stopping the jihadis from murdering people, right? All this started, remember, because jihadis.
Just to follow on Weeja's previous question, though, we've learned, according to an Israeli source, that Netanyahu was quite surprised by the president's comments about his expectations that there would be a ceasefire by Monday. So that doesn't bode a lot of optimism that one of the key parties was surprised by that timeline the president had set. So why did he say Monday?
I can't speak for the surprise that foreign leaders have or don't have with regard to things that we're saying. The president talked to y'all after staying completely up to speed, and he has been kept up to speed on how these negotiations are going, and he shared with you some context, and he certainly shared with you his optimism that we can get there. He's
optimistic, but not certain now. But he sounded very certain when he was like, there will be a deal on Monday.
Hopefully a short order. But he also said, it's not all done yet. And you don't have a deal until you have a deal. We don't have one right now. So the team is still working at this very, very hard, as I said in my opening statement, around the clock. But we believe that we are getting closer. And while we don't want to sound too sanguine or Pollyannish about it, we do think that there's been some serious negotiations.
And after Speaker Johnson's meeting with the president, it doesn't really sound like he's changed his mind on Ukraine. He again reiterated that the border needs to be addressed before Ukraine. So given this current trajectory, what does that mean for Ukraine?
That sounds reasonable.
I'd also point
address
to what
the
he said
border
about,
before we go sending
taking
billions
up
of
the
dollars
issue
to
of
Ukraine.
funding in a timely fashion. He said that right out there outside the West Wing.
I don't see what the problem is.
He does support funding for Ukraine. He said so himself. We know that the
why is
significant
that
House
so
leadership.
hard?
and certainly on both sides of the aisle in the House, support funding for Ukraine. Now the question is, when you say a timely fashion, what do you mean by that? I can tell you, to the Ukrainian soldier on the battlefront, timeliness is now. It's right now. As you and I just came back from the weekend, the Russians started taking some other towns.
Yay, we came back from the weekend.
Nothing to the significance of Avdiivka in terms of the logistics hub that they want to create there. But they're on the move. This is not some frozen conflict. And so we urge the Speaker, when he says a timely fashion, that he actually lives up to that. Because again, to the Ukrainian soldier, the time is right now.
The time was months ago. The time was months ago, a year ago. Really, like, if we were going to support Ukraine, we should have been all in on it from the start. That's what I'm saying. Like, why everything we do is so half-assed, right? We can't give them everything they need to defend themselves because that'll start a bigger war. So let's just give them enough to be butchered consistently. Like, it's the dumbest thing. Like, what kind of fucking administration, right, is like, oh, we need to fund the terrorists and the Jews at the same time. Oh, we gotta give Ukraine just enough to keep being butchered at a fucking escalating rate, right? But we can't give them enough to actually turn the tide. Like, this is all bullshit. This is all bullshit.
Before Ramadan starts.
This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Steve, is getting this deal in place as soon as we can. And you heard
let's strike the Houthis with a fucking proportional response, right? We don't want to kill too many Houthis, right? So let's just kind of kill them a little bit. Like, what the fuck is this bull? This is the dumbest shit I ever heard, dude.
We're hopeful that this can happen in coming days, and if that does, if we are able to get the pause in place and the hostages out,
let's just like have a ceasefire, but not call it a ceasefire. We'll call it a pause. Like, what a bunch of dumb bullshit. This is the dumbest fucking bullshit I've ever heard, dude.
Relatively short order. Then
this is why the world is laughing at us. It's because they come out and they say dumb shit like this. Like, oh, we're gonna fucking, let's just have a little bit of war. A little bit, right? Let's put all these people's lives at risk for nothing, right? It's not going to stop the Houthis. It's not going to stop Hamas, right? It's just a little bit of conflict, right? Let's put everyone in harm's way over nothing.
I was talking to Kelly about would certainly take you into Ramadan. But right now, it's not about trying to beat the clock to Ramadan. It's about trying to get these two sides to come to closure on a deal that, again, would get all those hostages out and get the fighting stopped.
Separately, we took note of the remarks by the French president today of the possibility of sending French troops to Ukraine. How would the United States regard any NATO ally sending troops to Ukraine?
Well, it's a sovereign decision that every NATO ally would have to make for themselves. You heard Secretary General Stoltenberg say himself he had no plans or intentions of.
This would be a dumb thing. This would be dumb. Right? If we send NATO allies, if NATO allies send troops, let's say Poland sends a fucking a wing of fighters to Ukraine to fight with Polish people flying Polish planes, then Poland gets invaded by Russia, right?
Certainly under NATO auspices of putting troops on the ground, and President Biden has been crystal clear since the beginning of this conflict. There will be no U.S. troops on the ground.
Biden has been anything but crystal clear
in Ukraine.
Thank you, John. Senator Schumer just said that
Biden has been as crystal clear as molasses. He's been as clear as fucking poop.
Ukraine couldn't afford to wait a month or two more for additional funding because
he's been as clear, as transparent as he is wordy, as he is eloquent.
It would, in all likelihood, lose the war. Is that the administration's assessment as well?
The situation's dire, MJ. As I said, the Russians not only took Avdiivka, they've taken a couple of other towns and villages in just the last 48, 72 hours.
Yeah, we were reading about that on Saturday.
These guys these Ukrainian soldiers
Russia's on a
the
tear.
front, I mean, they're making some real tough decisions about what they're going to shoot at.
They've
and what they're
just
gonna
been
shoot at it
winning
with.
and winning and winning
they're running
now
out
in
of
Ukraine.
bullets, and it's not, as Jake said the other day, it's not running out of courage. They're running out of bullets. So the situation is
running
very
out of
dire.
people.
I'm not in a position to.
They're running out of people.
Put a timestamp on it and say, by such and such a date, they'll lose the war. But they are certainly beginning to lose territory that they had clawed back from the Russians. And now they have to give it back to the Russians because they can't fight them off.
They lack manpower.
Do you generally agree that in a month's time, in 2 months' time, it is very possible that Ukraine could lose the war without additional funding?
What I would tell you that, as I said to Steve, the time
Ukraine
is
has
now.
already lost
Right
the
now.
war.
The
They've lost
situation
from the
is dire
get.
now. I can't predict what it'll look like in a month
I
or
can.
two because I can't
I can predict what it'll look like. More dead Ukrainians.
predict what the Russians are going to do. But certainly,
But now it's like old men and fucking retards. We've all seen the videos of the retards and the old men.
For argument's sake, if they continue to get no support from the United States, in a month or two, it is very likely that the Russians will achieve more territorial gains.
Macron
and
said
have more
France is going to
success
send
against
troops.
Ukrainian front lines in terms of just territory gain, mostly in the east, but potentially even in the south.
Just a quick follow-up on Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu said
Yeah,
over the
no
weekend
shit.
that regardless of what happens
Yeah.
with the ongoing hostage.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that the people in Crimea and Donbass, right, all voted to join Russia, right? So when we say we're defending democracy in Ukraine, that is a lie. We are punishing people for voting against the global world order's wishes, right? And we're punishing Ukraine by giving them false hope, right? Yes, imagine how many people would still be alive. About 1 million.
Hostage talks that they plan to go into Rafah. You just told Rija that it's not like the U.S. has seen some evacuation plan from the Israelis. So
No, it's not like we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it.
you have not. That is what I meant. Given that, do you believe that there is a plan by the Israelis to secure the safety of the civilians in Rafah before they enter Rafah, which again the Prime Minister says they are planning to do no matter what?
Well, the Prime Minister is also
Yeah,
said
they're
that
going to secure them. Nothing's more secure than a concrete fucking tomb.
He has ordered the Israeli Defense Forces to, in producing a plan for operations in Rafah, to include in that a plan for securing the safety of the more than 1 million refugees that are there.
The
Again,
Tartars didn't
we've
want
not
to
been
join
presented one.
Russia?
I can't speak for the Israelis and to what degree their planning has progressed and what that looks like, but the Prime
I don't
Minister
know anything
himself
about that.
has
What I
said
do know is
publicly
that
he's tasked his
Crimea
generals to come up with one.
But it's fair to say the
and
U.S.
the
wouldn't
Donbass
support
regions
Israeli
both
forces going
voted
into
to join
Rafah
Russia.
until you all have seen a plan that makes you feel confident that there is a plan to secure the safety of the civilians.
That's correct.
Skip.
Well, you're very quick to do it in Ukraine.
Skip. Here we go.
So I'm going to be really mindful because we're talking about an election, so I'm not going to comment on an upcoming election. But there's a couple things I do want to say, which I think is incredibly important. First of all, you know that senior officials have gone to Michigan as of late, earlier this month, to meet with Muslim and Arab Americans.
God, she looks
and
so
we
nice
understand,
today.
right, during a very deeply painful and personal moment, right? We understand what they're going through. We understand what this means to this community, and the president understands that too. So we care very much about about that and what the community again is going through, and we wanted to convey that very strongly, obviously, which is why you had senior officials go to Detroit, go to Michigan to have those conversations. And look, we know it's been a difficult time. The president cares about that. He cares about
folded inside her shirt.
what that community is feeling very deeply. And we believe it's important that they feel that they are able
Yeah, it's a very
to
nice
express
shirt.
themselves
It's
and
amazing
voice,
what a nice shirt
voice
can do.
Their feelings and their concerns.
Right?
And so, look,
Putting on a nice
you
shirt
heard the Admiral talk
really
about
changes
the
your
hostage
whole
deal,
image,
the
doesn't
temporary
it?
ceasefire. That is why it is so
Like, she
critical
just
and
looks
important
smarter
to get that
with
done.
that
That
shirt
is why I've
on.
seen this president and his administration work 24/7
Even though her collar's fucked up.
to get that done, so we can get a temporary ceasefire, so we can get that humanitarian aid into Gaza, so that we can get those hostages. And we have American hostages that are part of that number as well. We want to get those hostages home to their families, to their loved ones, and the president's not going to stop. You heard him yesterday in New York. He's not going to stop until we get that done. So I'll leave it there. Let me let the Admiral finish. Get Danny.
Thanks, Karine. Thanks, David. Just going back to President Macron's comments about not ruling out Western troops on the ground in Ukraine. Has President Macron discussed that suggestion with President Biden at all?
I won't go beyond the readout of the conversation. I don't have anything more to add on that.
Very briefly, you said as well that President Biden has said before that he would not send US troops to Ukraine in a combat role. The French foreign minister suggested that Western troops could be sent for demining or arms production or cyber. Is there a possibility is that something that would be considered by the US?
No, the only U.S. Military personnel that are in Ukraine are associated with the embassy as part of the defense attaché office, and
Yeah, that's actually a lie. Well, I don't know about now, but we know that in the past, right, that we have been, U.S. soldiers have been training and assisting with intelligence on the ground. There were something like 2,000 Americans inside of Ukraine already, American soldiers.
they're doing
Regular
important
military,
work in terms
not
of
militia.
helping us with the accountability of weapons and systems that are provided to Ukraine. But the president's been clear, there's not going to be U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Karine. Hi, John. One about
Oh, we got
Gaza
Captain
and another
Crappy.
one about Ukraine. On Gaza, what makes the president confident that ceasefire can be reached in a week? Any breakthroughs that made him confident about that? And any comment about the number of civilians dead in Gaza reaching 30,000? How many more?
Oh, yeah,
have to
no,
die
yeah,
until
the Republicans are Nazis.
Agree with permanent ceasefire.
Of course,
We don't
of
want
course.
to see one more die.
Of course,
Which is why
Captain.
This
They're holding back funding for Ukraine. They're literally. Oh wait, no, it's the Ukrainians that are the Nazis. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot. It's the Ukrainians that are actually the Nazis. I get them confused. Republicans, Ukrainians. They sound alike.
Getting from the national security team about the progress of those talks. We're hopeful. And as I said earlier, cautiously optimistic that we can get there, and hopefully in short order.
Tonight at 9:30.
It's been a lot of diplomatic work, a lot of negotiations to try to get us to this point, and we're not there yet. I think that's important to say. The president made that clear too. It's not you don't have a deal till you have a deal. We don't have a deal right now. But as for how many more should die, again, I've said many times before, the right number of civilian casualties is 0. We don't want to see one more person.
Why is it they don't want to see any dead jihadis, but dead Ukrainians are perfectly fine? We can kill all the Ukrainians we want, but God damn it, don't you touch a hair on the head of our jihadis.
An innocent person killed in this conflict, which is again why this 6-week or so
clown
pause
world.
could be so
We're living in a
terms of
clown
reducing
world.
the number of civilian casualties and giving us some breathing space to get more humanitarian assistance.
Hey, what's
in
up,
and
turning
potentially
guns?
Talk about an end to the conflict.
Free too, what's going on?
Ukraine very quickly, because Senator Schumer described the meeting on Ukraine as the most intense he ever had in the Oval Office. How does the president feel about it after the meeting? Does he believe a deal can be reached? He's more or less optimistic about it.
The president believes that it's important to continue to have these conversations. He believes it's important to make sure that, certainly in the speaker's case, that he makes the case for why it's important for this supplemental funding. Obviously, the big purpose of the meeting today, as Karine already let you guys know, was really about preventing a government shutdown. But clearly, they had the opportunity to talk about the national security supplemental, and the president made his case.
A couple of topics. One, with the grassroots communities meeting with the president and administration officials, Going back to the Dearborn, Michigan issue, you've got a large contingent of Arabs, you've got a large contingent
precious
of Muslims,
jihadis.
as well as Jewish people. Karine, you just said you're listening. For both of you, as you're listening, are you taking anything in as to what they're saying in these conversations? Are you acting on any of what they're saying?
Absolutely. We take these conversations very seriously.
They take them seriously, guy. Just like they take the safety of American troops in the Middle East very seriously. Then they don't defend them and they let them get murdered. And then just like they take the Chinese balloons very seriously, guys. Very seriously. Joe Biden takes classified documents very, 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 very seriously. They take the economy very seriously. They take inflation very seriously.
Specific details or just
That's why it's just transitory, and all the prices will go back down tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow.
Closing some of the things that we've been.
It's all corporate greed now. It's not even inflation now. It's corporate greed, and we take it very seriously.
We are taking them on board, and we are willing to adjust the way we're approaching the conflict and the way we're talking about the conflict. To reflect those concerns, but we're taking them very seriously.
They're taking it seriously. What more do you want?
Seriously, it sounds like you're acting on some of what they're saying. Is it more on the political front, humanitarian
Super serial.
front, or national security front that you're acting on with these grassroots conversations?
I can only speak about the national security implications here, and I can tell you very much that because the National Security Council has been a part and parcel of these conversations, and we're coming back for them, we feel, informed, more educated, and certainly more understanding of some of the concerns.
Good, because if that's one thing you guys need is more information and education. You guys are probably the dumbest, misinformed people, right? And I was watching something. I don't remember who I was watching. But they were talking about fractal wrongness, right? Where, like, your premise is so wrong that everything you say is, like, infinitely more wrong every word that you say.
Out there in the Arab community, and Arab American community, and again, we're taking that on board, and we're doing it, and we're acting on it.
And I know as
the
meeting
Biden
happened, it was
administration
about
suffers
preventing
from
the government
fractal
shutdown.
wrongness.
Again, there is an intertwining of foreign affairs, national security involved in the budget. But is there concern that it continues?
Why are they wearing masks? It's obviously to show how much they support the fucking vaccine, right? They want to make sure that they don't catch fucking turbo cancer or something. I don't fucking know.
You've been kicking the can down the road since last year, and it just keeps going and going and going. We keep coming to this point.
Oh, we got Girl Gone Dog.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's been unfortunate throughout this appropriations process now for the entire time we've been in office is the use of continuing resolutions to try to keep the government going. And just not to get into too long an answer here, but when you're
I use a mask to prevent
that means
facial
there's certain things
recognition.
like in the defense
Now
world
that's
where you
something
can't-
I can get
you can't
behind.
Enact new contracts for weapons
Yeah, I
systems.
totally
or
agree
ships
with that
or
one.
airplanes, because a CR only allows you to fund
Well
to last
said,
year's
Lucy.
numbers. So you're limited. You can't start some new programs,
calling you
and you
Lucy.
can't even pay
That-
for
I
some
like it.
programs using
It makes
new
more
funds
sense
because you're
to me.
stuck with the last year's funding. So it absolutely has
But
an
that's
effect
your
on
name.
national security.
Crippling the military, the U.S. military capabilities.
It is definitely making it harder for the Defense Department to continue to support our global requirements when you are talking about continuing resolution funding. It definitely hampers your flexibility. No
Hey, I
question
saw
about it.
your ducks. Girl Gone Dog, I saw your video of ducks.
And move on to Ukraine. You just said it's not about trying to beat
They
the
look
clock for
beautiful.
Ramadan
The
in
white
terms
duck
of
is
the
beautiful.
ceasefire. But how concerned is the administration about the possibility of escalation? It's going to be seen for U.S.-backed troops to be attacking.
We're mindful of the sensitivities, of course, around the month of Ramadan and the important, the spiritual importance.
What's
of
up,
that
blind dude?
To the Muslim world. Of course, we understand that. But we don't want to. We want to see this temporary ceasefire in place as soon as possible.
Well, too bad. Well, we want to see inflation reversed as soon as possible. We want to see the border closed as soon as possible. We want to see more fucking attention put on Chinese spies coming across the border.
Again,
how does it feel
if
to
we can
want?
get the agreement for several weeks, it would take you through Ramadan anyway. The clock that we're worried about is the hostages. We can only assume.
Office. Are you looking at other funding possibilities, Lend-Lease or loans to Ukraine or weapons sales to Ukraine? And then just to push you on Steve's question and Dana's question about French president, are you, does President Biden think it would be a good idea if France were to go in to Ukraine?
As for other funding, I've said before, there's no magic pot of money here that we can dip into. We need the supplemental funding. We asked for it in October. And again, it was done in good faith and in consultation with our Ukrainian partners. We need that funding. Look, we'll let President Macron speak for his military and what he is or is not willing to do with his troops.
They shouldn't do it.
He does not support
I'm against
US
sending
troops
NATO
involved
troops
in this
into
conflict
Ukraine.
in Ukraine, and I'll leave it at that.
I mean, unless we're all just going to start World War III now, then yes, do it. Right? I mean, if they can come out and say, look, World War III starts tomorrow, we're invading fucking Ukraine. Okay. But Ukraine better become a United States territory after that.
Thanks so much.
I'm sick of this bullshit.
I just was hoping you could help
I'm
me
sick of these pointless wars where we don't get anything in return. And we just funnel trillions of dollars into defense contractors and Joe Biden's brother and the fucking Clinton Foundation and all these things, right? That never, ever, they don't even build the shit that they're hired to build, right?
There are sort of two strains of conversation in this room. One has been about the sort of conditions that the United States wants to see before Israel goes into Rafah. The president himself referenced this last night, saying that he'd want to know about plans for evacuation before they go in and take out the remainder of Hamas. Separately, we've been talking a lot about a ceasefire that could start as early as, this weekend. So can you help me understand, is the idea here that there would be a invasion of Rafah before the ceasefire, or it's going to come after the ceasefire?
There is going to be no ceasefire, according to Israel.
I understand the confusion, but you actually do have to kind of consider them a bit separately. And again, I don't want to speak.
Skip. This is all they're just keep asking
Oval
the
Office
same
discussions
questions
today,
and just
Speaker
won't
Johnson
answer them.
came out and as he said before, that southern border has to be addressed before Ukraine aid and funding. They are saying that this
Who are they zooming in on?
shouldn't be done legislatively.
What a great fucking production crew they got over at the White House, guys.
More so that it should be done by rolling back executive orders or changing it from an executive perspective.
Oh, it's
Is that
terrible.
part of these discussions, and is the White House ruling out undoing some of the executive orders from earlier on in the administration?
I'd say a couple of things. First,
I
the
think
president
that guy
has
is
taken
the Fox
executive
News
action
guy
at the border,
today. I don't know
and
who he
certainly
is.
will continue to do so as appropriate and within the bounds of the law. He's also said,
He's
that
in the
in
Fox
order to
News
make
chair,
the
though.
changes, the fixes to border security, you got to have new legislation. A lot of this has to do with capabilities, personnel, and resourcing, infrastructure. You can't just make that
Iran
happen through
is
executive
actually
action.
Iran is actually the word Aryan. It's just that's how they say it over there. Yes, you're absolutely correct, Uzi.
And all of that, you've got to have funding behind it, which is why the supplemental request was so important. And the one submitted in October included border security. And the president said months ago he was willing to have a discussion with members of Congress about border security. Border security was in the supplemental request, and we worked with the Senate to get a bipartisan deal arranged that the Speaker said he absolutely insisted on. And then when it was delivered to him, he said no, he didn't want it.
So there would have to be a legislative component to this if, let's say, Republicans are saying you can unlock Ukraine funding if you were to do something executive-wise on
We were willing to have a discussion, and did with the Senate, about border security and Ukraine funding, as well as Israel and the Indo-Pacific. We're still willing to have those discussions. The Speaker has to decide exactly what he wants to do here, and then move out. He says he wants to act in a timely fashion on Ukraine. Well, let's go. Let's get them what they need, and the President is more than willing to have discussions about the border.
We gotta wrap it up. Good, Tam.
At what point do you declare the supplemental dead or too late to help Ukraine?
We need it now. I won't even begin to speculate about what would be too late. We're already, in some ways, too late. They lost.
Well, if we're already too late, then what's the point in sending money?
Lost the town of Avdiivka literally because of ammunition. So in some ways,
we literally don't have the ammo to send them, right? Like, who are they going to buy it from? The Chinese? I mean,
it's already having a dramatic effect on the battlefield.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Give me 1 second.
All right. All right, get your waders on, guys. Everyone get their wading boots on because the shit is about to get deep. And when I say shit, I mean bullshit.
Hi. So
I had something to say and I changed my mind.
I mean, all right. So in the past, you've described Speaker Johnson's proposals as not serious regarding government funding, the border, Ukraine. In the Oval Office today, was Speaker Johnson serious? Did he meet the threshold that the White House has set in the past?
So a couple of things. I know that Senator Schumer said it was intense. Yes, the meeting was intense, but it was also very productive, and I think that's important.
Well, I like
to take
the sound of that.
Account. A couple of things that I would say is that all four congressional leaders agreed with the president and the vice president that a shutdown is unacceptable. But as you all know,
we got a new sign language. Sign languager.
It has been ticking.
Look,
for
we got
some
Granny
time now,
sign
and
language.
It continues to do so, right? As it relates, obviously, to
It's funny. That's the average Democrat voter right there. A middle-aged, older white woman with no kids who's wasted their entire life trying to slide up the corporate ladder. And now they have no family to look after them. They don't believe the future is worth anything. And they want to destroy our future. Because they don't have one.
Potential shutdown, but also what we're seeing, right, with the National Security Supplemental. This is something that we put forth back in October. And as it relates to that, all four leaders also understood the gravity of the situation in Ukraine. And they heard, and here's the thing, they heard a sobering account from the CIA.
She's not Spock, she's Worf.
A director who's in the room about how Ukraine has lost ground on the battlefield.
There are black Vulcans, though. Remember Tuvok.
In recent weeks because of congressional inaction. And so this is the reality. This is the reality that Ukraine is in. This is the reality that we're in when we talk about our national security. And this is the reality that Congress is in. They have not taken action. And so we are seeing what's happening currently in the battlefield in Ukraine. So as the president said, there are consequences.
There are consequences. If you guys don't secure the border, more of Ukraine will be lost to Russia. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Sorry about your luck.
These are incredibly dire. Congress must take action. We have to support our national security. And that is what the president, that was the message.
You don't slide up the corporate ladder.
During that
the corporate ladder slides up
and
you.
That's how we saw the meeting play out. All four congressional leaders were in agreement on those two pieces that I just laid out here. It is incredibly important to move forward. The clock is ticking here. The clock is ticking. Go ahead.
The clock is ticking on Ukraine. And the alarms have gone off a year ago.
Johnson and the president had their first face-to-face, one-on-one meeting. What can you share about
the clock is ticking on Ukraine, guys? Because all their soldiers are on Social Security, right? They're all their soldiers already have one foot in the grave because they're like 80 years old.
So yes, and I think obviously the speaker spoke to this himself when he was at the Sticks. The president and Speaker Johnson had a moment after after the meeting, after the group meeting. I'm going to be mindful here. It was a private discussion, so I don't have a readout for all of you, but it was, you heard from the speaker on how, on his side of things. I just don't have anything else to share on the private meeting that they had.
Okay, well, earlier you just said that this was a very productive meeting.
Yeah.
On the Ukraine funding front, what was productive about it? It seems like nothing has changed.
Well, look, I mean...
Look, I'm going to say it was productive, and you guys are just supposed to agree with me. Quit asking me hard questions. Look, the president has said the meeting was very productive. Okay, that's what the president has said.
I mean, there's work to do, obviously, right? There's work to do, and we have said, if the speaker puts this on the floor, it would get bipartisan support. We believe that. We're talking about the National Security Supplemental. Obviously, it would have bipartisan support. I just laid out how all four leaders heard directly from the CIA director about how dire it is and what we have seen in the last couple of months in Ukraine because of the congressional inaction. I mean, that is dire, right? That they heard dire reports from the CIA director on what is currently happening. And, you know, and it's not that, just that, it's what you all have reported from what's coming out of Ukraine and what we have seen as recently as last week when Russia took over one of the critical cities in Ukraine.
Russia's taken over many critical
the evidence
cities
is
in
there.
Ukraine.
They heard from the CIA director, the reporting, all of you all have reporting. We've heard from President Zelensky directly about this. There are consequences here. There are consequences. And you know, Congress needs to act. The House needs to act. Senate acted 70-29. They passed a bipartisan, in a bipartisan way, this National Security Supplemental. Now we need it to go to the floor. We know, hearing from Republicans in the House, that there would be bipartisan support. So yes, it was productive in the sense that everybody was in agreement on what needs to happen next. Now we need to see that action in Congress.
Yesterday, a U.S. airman died after he set himself on fire outside outside the Israel embassy. Was the president aware of his death? Does he have any sort of response to it?
Yes, the president is aware, and I can say that it is obviously it's a horrible tragedy, and our thoughts are with the family of the service member. During this, we can't even imagine this.
Look at her eyelashes. That's her eyelids. That's how you know she's full of shit.
Are looking into this, so we're not going to get ahead of that. So
well, I'm afraid one day she's just going to have a stroke. It looks like she's about to have a stroke sometimes.
Horrific tragedy, what occurred the other day.
Is there anything new that you can share about the president's visit to the border on Thursday? Does he have any plans to announce any executive actions?
So I don't have anything I'm not going to get ahead of the president. Don't have anything to
I'm not going to get ahead of the president.
At this time. We've spoken to executive actions. I've spoken to that many times. We think the bottom line is the way to have dealt with this border, the challenge that we see at the border, what we see with this immigration, a broken immigration system.
Or you could just reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. One or the other. Do nothing or reinstate the Mexico policy. Remain in Mexico. One of them will work. I know that.
That has been broken for decades. Is if Republicans have moved
It
forward.
was broken for decades until Trump fixed it with the Remain in Mexico policy, which you guys immediately reversed on day one and started all of this. Like, they act like we don't remember, like, what it used to, what happened, like how we got here. They act like we just are here. There's no connection to the past and the present.
With the bipartisan deal that came out of the Senate. But instead of doing that, they listened to Donald Trump, the former president, and they made it about politics.
Oh, it's all Donald Trump's fault. Oh, of course. Orange man bad. I forgot.
Did not make it about an issue that majority of Americans care about. They made it about politics and Donald Trump, and that is unfortunate. What I will say is just, and I said this yesterday in the gaggle, I'll say it again. As you all know, he's going to travel to Brownsville, Texas. He's going to meet with U.S. Border Patrol agents,
the
law
president's
enforcement,
going
and
down to
local
the border
leaders, and he's going to discuss
for a
the
photo
urgent
op
need to pass.
Right? He's going to go down to Eagle Pass and be like, look, there's no problem with the border. He's going to go down and stand in front of the people fighting him on the border and declare there's no problem at the border. Right?
The bipartisan proposal that came out of the Senate. And we believe that if this proposal, this legislation were to become law, it would be, yes, the toughest.
Be
but
like,
also
look
the
how I
fairest.
cleaned up the border. Look at it. Eagle Pass used to have a fucking 10,000 people a day crossing it. Now there's none. Look at what a great job I've done.
And let's not forget, it was supported by the Border.
As he literally fights in court to have Texas stop doing what they're doing down there.
Patrol Union, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and you don't see that type of support for a bipartisan piece of legislation nowadays. And so he's going to reiterate to congressional Republicans to stop playing politics, to focus on the American people, to get this done. If they are serious about giving the U.S. Border Patrol agents what they need, if they are serious about fixing the immigration.
Remember, when they say giving Border Patrol agents what they need, according to the Democrats, what they need is more money to help process illegal immigrants into the country faster, right? That's when they talk about fixing the border problem, what they talk about is giving them more money to process people through the country faster. What's up, Felix?
System, they would get politics, push politics to the side, and do the work on behalf of the American people. Cat County.
Speaker Johnson referred to a separate second meeting with him and the president. You referred to it as a moment. Was it a separate sit-down? Was it planned that the president would make that time available, or did that just kind of come out organically after the meeting?
Look, I think the president, wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with Speaker Johnson. They did. It happened after the group meeting.
It happened. It was real. It happened, and it was real. And you guys, the president said there was been a lot of success made.
Spoke briefly.
There's a lot of progress.
It was a private discussion. And so that's how we would call it. It happened after the briefing. He pulled him to the side while the other three left, and they had a moment. They had a conversation. I wouldn't get too into the semantics here. I would just say they had a moment, and I think it's important that the president believed it was important to have a moment and to have a brief conversation.
So that sounds more like something that just came up today, not on the planned schedule as you set the date.
Look, it wasn't a planned on the planned schedule. I think the president wanted to have
What?
a
I'm mega mega. Are you mega mega too?
He did that, and he believed it was important to do. Don't have a readout of it. Obviously, it was a private discussion, a private.
Mega mega is the right word. I'm so mega
any
mega.
Agreement if the speaker had accepted a premise from the president, or if they had made any kind of a more formal decision in that moment, would that be something you could share?
I mean, look, I think we've been very clear. What we want to see, and it doesn't change, right? What we want to see is the national supplemental as it was passed out of the Senate in a bipartisan way, 70-29, to deal with our national security, to deal with what's going on in Ukraine, to deal with what's going on in the Middle East, and in the Pacific. Let's not forget, we want to see that pass. We want to see, because that hasn't changed, right? So there's no separate deal here. What we want to see is this national security supplemental be put to the fore. And
1.59 trillion
from Congressional House Republicans that it would pass.
1.59 trillion is what Schumer
and they
wants.
Heard the big four heard directly from the CIA director about how dire
Guys,
the consequences are dire.
That's on top of the $5 trillion that they're already going to spend. They want to spend more money.
And we've seen that. We've seen Ukraine has lost ground in the battlefield. And so we need to see that action. We need them to move forward on the supplemental. That's what the president wants to see. And obviously, there's the other issue of a potential shutdown. The clock is ticking on that as well. They got to move. They got to move and stop focusing on extreme positions here. We got to move, and this is about the American people. That's what this should be about. Okay,
thanks, Karine. You said the big four all understand the gravity of the situation in Ukraine, but does the president actually trust Speaker Johnson? Did this move the ball forward at all in terms of convincing him to put Ukraine aid on the floor for a vote?
So, look, he needs to do, this is Speaker Johnson, needs to do what's best for the American people. He needs to do what's best for our national security. He needs to do what's best for our country. He needs to put our national security supplemental on the floor. That's what we know. The last
Come on,
time
guys,
there was
this
a vote on
1.59 trillion isn't going to print itself.
Ukraine, it got more than 300 votes, including many, many House Republicans. That's the reality. And so, and also
That's the
keeping the
reality.
government open. There are critical programs that the American people need. If the government shuts down, Americans don't get those critical programs that they need. And so,
what critical program? How is bombs for Ukraine critical programs? I don't understand what these people are saying. Make it make sense, somebody, please.
look, I can't speak for the speaker and what he's going to do. What I can speak for and what we can continue to reiterate from here, and what the president can continue to reiterate, is how important it is to move forward. There are national security consequences here, as I've laid out moments ago, and there's also critical programs,
Fannie Willis
important
is gross.
programs of the American
I've been calling her flabby titties.
people as it relates
Flabby
to
titties.
keeping the government open. It is
With a backwards dress. Oh, that's so fucking humiliating. Oh, she is so low class, she doesn't even know how to put a fucking dress on right. That girl is disgusting. She's disgusting. She's gross. She's a homewrecker.
is literally a basic duty that Congress has, and Republicans in the House are getting in the way of that, and they should not.
And the president sounded confident or optimistic that a government shutdown could be avoided, but we're only days away. No bill text has been released. There are still many, many policy disputes. So where is that optimism coming from?
I mean, the president is optimistic.
Well, from the same place where all of our policies and our fucking words come from. The deepest, darkest imagination of the most retarded libtard.
Person, you guys know that. He talks about that often in many speeches that he gives to the American people about optimism.
Let's take over Mexico. I agree.
That is a president
we should have took over Mexico 20 years ago.
Who believes in that. And so, look, he's going to continue to be optimistic.
If they all want to be Americans, we should just annex the whole fucking country, right?
We're here to have these critical, important conversations about how to move forward here. And it's about the American people. This is not about the president here. We're talking about the national security supplemental. We're talking about keeping the government open, even our border challenges. This is about the American people. So we have to be optimistic. But we're going to continue to do the work. When the Big Four, when the congressional members left, what was agreed upon is that their teams would continue to have conversations, obviously, with our teams, OMB, Office of Leg Affairs, to continue to have those conversations on how to certainly deal with what's going on with the potential shutdown as the clock is ticking. And we're going to continue to push to make.
Imagine how about this? South Texas. That's what we'll call it. Mexico can be called South Texas. That would be so awesome.
to reiterate the importance of putting that national security bill on the floor. It already came out of the Senate in a bipartisan way. It needs to go to the floor in the House.
Is it more and more likely we'll just get another CR?
Look, I can't speak to, I'm not going to speak to.
Yeah, Mexican people are awesome. I love them. They'll make great Americans when we annex Mexico. I mean, they already make great Americans. Latinos of Mexican descent are the fastest growing up the social ladder, up the ladder of wealth in the country, because they're hardworking and they're deeply traditional.
How Congress is going to move with a procedure, I'll leave that up to them, and how they want to move with the CR, if there is a CR. What we are going to continue to reiterate and say from here is how important to get that national security supplemental through, how important it is to
Oblivion was a good game. I heard that there's mad mods. There's like an HD mod for it, and that it looks amazing. So, yeah, awesome.
You to keep the government open And we're not going to stop talking about the border. You'll see the president on Thursday in Texas talking about how
America
important it
is
was,
northern Mexico.
to get that bipartisan Senate agreement. And because of the former president, Republicans decided to reject a bipartisan agreement that was supported by the Border Patrol Union. That was
All right,
supported-
we're done. We're just going to stop this. We're just going to stop here. She's boring me. I'm more interested in talking about southern Texas than I am about talking about whatever the fuck she's going on about. She just sounds like a little kid, like, please believe me, there's a monster under the bed. Please believe me, I didn't eat all the chocolate chip cookies. You gotta believe me, it was the ghost. It was the monster that lives under my bed. Southern Canada. Yeah, I bet it's fucking awesome, Michael. Now you're kind of making me want to do that. We should be South Quebec. No. Quebec should be northern Minnesota. Fandom Iconic around 9:30. Oh. Well, I was going to do a Trump victory party tonight, but I don't want... We'll do it at 8. We'll run into Fandom Iconic show, and then I'll send everybody over there. Because we got to do a Trump victory party, and I have news stories. So, that's what we'll do. We'll do a Trump victory party, and then I'll send everybody over to Fandom after that. How about that? No, I didn't see that the Rothschilds died. We'll look into that too. Now remember, guys, I'm being heavily persecuted by the YouTube algorithm. So if you guys like the channel and you want to support it, that's how you can do it. I dropped some links in the chat. Yeah, so I'll see you guys tonight around 8 o'clock for a Trump victory party. Jacob Rothschild died? Neat. Sounds great, Fandom. Sounds great. All right, guys. Well, remember, we go live with all kinds of content whenever the fuck I say. I'll see you later. Make sure you subscribe to the channel.